Sometimes it feels like we're being taxed to death. Every paycheck, every time we buy something, every time we take a deep breath, the government is there for their cut. Nobody likes taxes. If we did, we'd all line up in front of government buildings waiting for the chance to pay, like a 1980s Star Wars opening day. Even though we hate them, we still have to pay them or the wheels fall off the train. So I looked at all 50 states with their tax burden and I ranked them from the lowest to the highest. The total tax burden is basically what the typical person pays in taxes, what percentage of their income. What I learned was in almost all cases, the states that have the highest taxes have larger populations, and the ones with the lower populations have lower taxes. They also have bad schools and poor infrastructure. Nice things are expensive. There are a few outliers, but for the most part, that's the rule. Today we're ranking the states by their total tax burden, from lowest to highest. Before you watch, see if you can guess the top 3. Leave it in the comment section. Got it? Get it? Good. Let's take a look. 50, Alaska. No state income tax, because when it's dark for 6 months, the cost of living is sky high, and a moose might break into your house. You deserve something for sticking around. The government even pays you a yearly oil dividend check, which is great until you realize it barely covers your heating bill for the year. The total tax burden in Alaska is 4.93%. This is as of December 2024. 49, New Hampshire. No state income tax, no sales tax, just a live free or die spirit with high property taxes that quietly rob you in your sleep. New Hampshire is one of those outliers. I mean, it's in New England, and for the most part, those states tax the hell out of you. Not New Hampshire, they're doing their own thing. The total tax burden in New Hampshire is 5.36%. 48, Wyoming. Most of their taxes, I imagine, go to stopping Californians from moving in. You know, different programs like trying to convince people Wyoming's really not there. I bet if these people could figure it out, they'd put one of those domes over the state like that show that they used to have, Under the Dome. The Wyoming state tax burden is 5.70%. 47, Florida. No state income tax in this state. That's because Disney, tourists, and hurricane insurance are already doing their best to drain your bank account. Property taxes are reasonable until you realize that the homeowner's insurance costs you more than your actual mortgage. Also, get ready for the unofficial alligator tax, which is the price you pay when one decides to squat in your swimming pool. Florida's total tax burden is 6.05%. 46, Tennessee. Yes, another state with no state income tax. Instead, they tax the ever-living hell out of whiskey, tourism, Taylor Swift references. The budget also funds bachelorette party damage control in Nashville. Tennessee is definitely a tax-friendly state by most people's standards, and it's an appealing state to move to, outside of Memphis. Tennessee's total tax burden is 6.07%. 45, Delaware. A tax haven for corporations. Meanwhile, actual residents still have to pay weird fees on everything from car registration to breathing too loudly. But hey, at least you can drive across the entire state in under an hour, right? Delaware's total tax burden is 6.43%. 44, South Dakota. No state income tax because Mount Rushmore's tourist dollars do all the heavy lifting. You know, it's really weird. South Dakota is becoming a more and more popular state to move to, and there's really nothing going on there, except it's affordable and has low taxes. I think people have just fallen in love with its outlaw aura from, like Sturgis and stuff like that. Anyway, the total tax burden in South Dakota is 6.44%. 43, North Dakota. Your taxes go to ensuring that North Dakota remains a real state despite all the evidence to the contrary. Oil money keeps the budget afloat, and the public services are solid for one reason and one reason only. There's really not that many people to mess them up. The total tax burden in North Dakota is 6.80%. 42, Oklahoma. Taxes fund tornado sirens, casinos disguised as gas stations, and a state government that can't decide if it's a real place or just a Texas side quest. Meanwhile, the infrastructure is so bad that potholes are now considered historical landmarks. The total tax burden in Oklahoma is 7.04%. 41, Nevada. no state income tax again, because casinos are already doing the Lord's work by emptying your wallet. The state's budget mostly goes towards maintaining the illusion that Las Vegas isn't just a giant neon fever dream. Meanwhile, if you live anywhere outside Vegas or Reno, your taxes fund essential services like dust storms and scorpion relocation programs. The total tax burden in Nevada is 7.37%. 39, South Carolina. Heading south. Low taxes, which is great until you realize that you're paying extra in car repairs because the roads look like the surface of the frickin' moon. The budget mostly funds golf courses, boiled peanuts, and making sure humidity remains unbearable. The total tax burden in South Carolina is 7.50%. 39, Montana. No sales tax, which sounds great until you realize everything costs twice as much because you have to drive 100 miles to buy it. Most tax dollars go towards keeping Yellowstone from spontaneously exploding and removing tourists from bison attack zones. Yeah, what is the deal with that? Why do you always see people every single year messing with the bison in Montana or Wyoming for that matter? Most people don't know this, but did you know Yellowstone is also in Idaho? Everyone just assumes it's in Wyoming and Montana, but there is a little portion in Idaho. But Montana is tied with South Carolina with a tax burden that is 7.50%. 38, Alabama. Taxes here fund the essentials: football stadiums, barbecue sauce research, and fixing potholes that double as small lakes. A few years back, there was some kind of flooding, and I saw a YouTube video where the guy found a pothole that actually had a fish in it swimming around. And he's all, damn, the potholes are so bad here. They got fish in them. The total tax burden in Alabama is 7.52%. 37, Texas. Another state with no income tax. This is because the property taxes are so high, they make you reconsider home ownership entirely. The budget funds massive highways, oversized Buc-ee's gas stations, and whatever Austin is doing. Nobody knows what's going on there. Meanwhile, the roads are constantly under construction, but never actually finished. I was there year before last, driving around Irving and Dallas. It was crazy with the road construction. It was everywhere. And I mentioned this before, but I got on their toll road or whatever it is, which actually goes underneath the highway. Those people on there are crazy. I was doing 80 miles an hour and there were people flying past me like I was standing still. I was passed by a bread truck. The total tax burden in Texas is 7.56%. 36, Georgia. Your tax dollars fund Atlanta's airport, which is actually a black hole that devours flights and souls alike. The roads get just enough funding to keep them barely drivable, and the state spends a significant chunk of the budget ensuring no one ever wins the argument about whether Atlanta is in real Georgia. That's what a lot of them say. Oh, Atlanta's not really Georgia. The total tax burden in Georgia is 7.65%. 35, Missouri. Taxes fund state-of-the-art weather prediction systems that always seem to be surprised by tornado season. It's been my observation that Missouri has a strange amount of dams. Now, they have a lot of water flowing through the state. Obviously, the Mississippi River flows along its eastern border. But everywhere you go in that state, there's a lake, there's a dam, there's dudes named Jed or Jeb. And whenever you tell them you're from the West Coast, they treat you like a cop that wants to arrest you, but he has no reason to arrest you. They get a little bitter. From the West Coast, you say, park around here? By the way, if a cop ever asks you if you parked around here or where you're parked, don't tell them. Unless they suspect you of something, in that case, they'll tell you that. We suspect you're smuggling black market otter pops. We need to see in your trunk. The total tax burden in Missouri is 7.76%. 34, Arizona. Taxes fund important things like keeping Phoenix livable, which is always an uphill battle considering the temperatures regularly reach deep-fried asphalt levels. Want state services? Too bad. But you do get to pay extra for water because apparently living in the desert is expensive. Who saw that one coming? What do you mean only cold-blooded creatures live out here in the desert? There's a bunch of people from New York dodging subpoenas. They'd like to give it a shot. The total tax burden in Arizona is 7.79%. 33, Idaho. The tax rate is reasonable, but if you don't pay, the state forces you to write a personal apology letter to the potatoes. The budget is mostly spent on making sure people don't confuse Idaho with Iowa and funding the state's ongoing efforts to keep Californians from moving in. This is another state that would like to get one of those domes. The total tax burden in Idaho is 7.86%. 32, North Carolina. Taxes fund beaches, barbecue festivals, and whatever it takes to keep people arguing about Eastern versus Western barbecue sauce. North Carolina, I think, is like the new California. I mean, it's got beaches just like California. It's got beautiful mountains just like California. Starting to gain more and more tech jobs every single year. Good paying tech jobs, I should say. And young people are drawn to it, just like California has always been until recent years. But I think one thing they have up on California definitely is it's more affordable, both in taxes and just cost of living in real estate. The total tax burden in North Carolina is 7.89%. 31, Michigan. Your tax money funds public schools, Flint's maybe drinkable water, and potholes so large, Google Maps has some of them named, like they're a business or a landmark. The good news is you get to root for the Lions, which means you'll never have to worry about buying playoff tickets again. They did good the last couple years, but I think that's coming to an end. Sadly, the total tax burden in Michigan is 8.02%. 30, New Mexico. Your tax dollars are spent wisely, mostly keeping Roswell weird and funding government UFO cover-ups. The total tax burden in New Mexico is 8.03%. 29, Washington. Now this one's a little bit of a head scratcher because Washington is a move to state. It's also a very blue state, which they're kind of known for having high taxes. And here they are, not even at the middle of the road. Probably why they're one of the most moved to states. They have no state income tax. Instead, they get you with property taxes and gas prices so high, they should be illegal. Most of the budget goes towards tech billionaires, rain-resistant infrastructure, and ensuring that Starbucks remains culturally relevant. The total tax burden in Washington state is 8.04%. 28, Kentucky. A chunk of your taxes goes towards horse racing, bourbon quality control, and ensuring the state's legendary feuds remain family business only. You don't get much in return, but you do get to say y'all without judgment, so that's something, right? Yeah, Kentucky's infrastructure is horrible. Outside of their universities, their school system is, oh yeah, it doesn't get good grades. The total tax burden in Kentucky is 8.26%. 27, Louisiana. You pay taxes and in return you get roads that feel like a Mardi Gras hangover. The state government prioritizes things like keeping crawfish festivals well funded and ensuring New Orleans never runs out of beads or excuses. Louisiana definitely has some of the worst infrastructure I've ever been around in my life. Been there a few times over the last couple of years, and during the early 2000s, I was there like 4 or 5 different times. Each time I was like, how is this a thing here? Louisiana's total tax burden is 8.29%. 26, Wisconsin. Your tax dollars fund cheese curds, beer science, and keep a lid on how bad Milwaukee actually is. I did a video not too long ago that was pretty interesting. It compared Portland to Milwaukee. They're roughly the same size, but Milwaukee's police force is like a third the size of Portland's. Their budget is like a third of Portland's. The city's entire budget is half of Portland's. Yet Portland had more crime and more homeless people. Milwaukee has enough homeless people to maybe fill a small school bus, where Portland has enough homeless people to make a high school football stadium standing room only. Wisconsin's total tax burden is 8.32%. 25, Pennsylvania. Taxes are used to maintain the entire turnpike system that somehow costs more than the GDP of a small country. I like Pennsylvania, but every time I go to Philadelphia, I think, what are they doing with their tax dollars exactly? Because it doesn't look like they're spending it on Philadelphia. The total tax burden in Pennsylvania is 8.36%. 24, Colorado. Your taxes help maintain the great outdoors, fund ski resorts, and make sure everyone can afford the legal lettuce. The cost of living is skyrocketing, but hey, at least you get to hike for free, right? Unless you count the fees for parking, park passes, and emergency helicopter rescues when tourists forget that altitude sickness is real. The total tax burden in Colorado is 8.42%. 23, Oregon. Yeah, Oregon's one of those states that has no sales tax, but they get you on property taxes and state income tax. It's brutal. I don't know if I want to move or just cry into a pillow. The total tax burden in Oregon is 8.44%. Yes, that's with missing one of the major taxes. There's still 8.44%. 21, West Virginia. Low taxes, because the economy mostly runs on coal, moonshine, and tourism. Taxes fund coal mines, Bigfoot museums, and the ongoing effort to make sure the state doesn't physically detach from the rest of the country. The infrastructure is actually decent, because everyone's already left. So no one runs down the roads and, wears them out. And from what I gather, not many people go to school. The total tax burden in West Virginia is 8.45%. Most of that money goes to unemployment payments. 21, again, Virginia. Taxes fund Colonial Williamsburg, cosplay, military bases, and a state government that still can't figure out I-95 traffic. The economy is 50% history tourism, 50% commuting to DC. I'm a little surprised Virginia's taxes aren't higher. I thought they'd be close to the top 10, but here they are at 21. What's really strange is they're tied with West Virginia, and you think West Virginia would drop their taxes through the floor just to bring people in. Again, the total tax burden in Virginia is 8.45%. 20, Massachusetts. You get taxed for thinking about money, property taxes, tolls, and fees to make sure the budget stays high enough to fund Harvard, Dunkin' Donuts, and yet another highway project that won't be finished before your great-grandkids are born. This one shocked me a little bit too. I'm surprised Massachusetts wasn't in the top 10 for highest, but their total tax burden is 8.55%. 19, Mississippi. Low taxes, because who needs public services when you have a crumbling infrastructure and extreme poverty? No wonder nothing ever gets fixed here. Mississippi's total tax burden is 8.76%. 18, Arkansas. Your taxes help keep Walmart headquarters in tip-top shape and fund some of the best road construction delays in the country. Not roads, just delays. The government also spends a surprising amount of money ensuring that the possum-related highway accidents remain at an all-time high. The total tax burden in Arkansas is 8.79%. 17, Indiana. A flat state with a flat tax. The budget mostly goes towards ensuring that basketball remains the most important thing to ever happen here. Yes, behind corn. The total tax burden in Indiana is 8.85%. 16, Ohio. The tax rate is reasonable, but all of your money eventually disappears into Cleveland's latest failed sports franchise. The state also funds never-ending road construction and an elaborate scheme to make sure that no one ever understands how the highway system actually works. The total tax burden in Ohio is 8.92%. 15, Nebraska. Property taxes are brutal, and the budget ensures every Cornhusker fan can maintain the delusion that next year is their year, even though the football team peaked during the Clinton administration. Also, expect tax dollars to fund year-round tornado survival training. The total tax burden in Nebraska is 9.16%. 14, Iowa. You get taxed for corn, by corn, and because of corn. The state's budget is also responsible for funding presidential campaign stops every 4 years because, for some reason, Iowa gets to decide who runs the country before anyone else does. The total tax burden in Iowa is 9.21%. 13, Maryland. Have you ever wanted to pay high taxes just to sit in traffic outside Washington, D.C. for 3 hours a day? Good news, Maryland's got you covered if that's your thing. Also, your tax dollars fund the continued research into why crabs are both a local delicacy and the state's personality. I'm sure a major part of their budget goes to trying to solve crime in Baltimore. They've made great strides in recent years, but it's still pretty bad. Kinda sucks. The total tax burden in Maryland is 9.26%. Number 12, Kansas. What is Kansas doing here? Midwest, southern states, you're not supposed to be charging people taxes. That's for New England and the West Coast. Your taxes are supposed to be reasonable, and here they are. Kansas taxes fund tornado sirens, Wizard of Oz tourism, and making sure that the state stays as flat as humanly possible. If you want good roads, move somewhere else, because Kansas prefers free chiropractic adjustments as a method of pothole maintenance. The total tax burden in Kansas is 9.29%. 11, Utah. Taxes fund family-sized minivans, emergency Jell-O rationings, and a billboard campaign reminding you to be polite. Yeah, that's weird. Driving around Salt Lake City, I kept seeing billboards reminding you to be nice. A smile goes a long way. Stuff like that was weird. The total tax burden in Utah is 9.35%. Number 10, Rhode Island. The taxes here are insanely high, and I don't understand it. I mean, the entire state is the size of a Costco parking lot. The government spends most of its money making sure no one confuses Rhode Island with Long Island. The total tax burden in Rhode Island is 9.38%. Number 9, New Jersey. Your taxes fund bridge closures, mafia retirement homes, and the ongoing study to determine why people still willingly live here. Taxes have always been high in New Jersey, and I really thought they would be number 1 or 2. I'm kind of shocked here. The total tax burden in New Jersey is 9.47%. Number 8, Illinois. Taxes are like Chicago winters, brutal, unavoidable, and capable of making you question why you don't move to Greenland. Property taxes alone could fund a small country, and thanks to corruption, you get to pay extra just to watch politicians get indicted every few years. The total tax burden in Illinois is 9.67%. Number 7, Minnesota. Minnesota's kind of strange. I think it'd be a lot better state and more people would be moving to it. Not like it's any slouch, but I think it'd be one of the more popular states if it wasn't so damn cold. Taxes fund public ice rinks, snow plows, and ensuring that everyone owns at least one pair of thermal socks. Half the state's budget is just used to keep people from moving someplace warmer. The total tax burden in Minnesota is 9.95%, almost hitting that 10%. Number 6, Connecticut. Taxes here are so high they come with nosebleeds. But don't worry, you get world-class toll roads in return. It's also the only state where paying property tax feels like buying a second house that you don't actually get to live in. This one makes sense. I mean, it's a New England state. They're kind of known for their taxes. I don't know how New Hampshire slipped out of the top 10, but they did. Connecticut's total tax burden is 10.08%. Number 5, California. I know a lot of people are shocked. They were sure California was going to have the highest taxes. I mean, 5 is not much better, but it's not number 1. Ever wanted to experience a progressive tax system where even breathing feels taxable? Welcome to California. In exchange for your wallet, you get the privilege of waiting 6 hours in traffic, paying $10 for a gallon of gas, and watching the state set itself on fire every summer, and in this case this year, in the dead of winter. I hope you enjoy paying taxes for your taxes. Pay half your salary in taxes, and in return, you get homeless, wildfires, and the privilege of renting a shoebox for $3,500 a month. The total tax burden in California is 10.40%. Number 4, Maine. Your tax dollars go towards heating subsidies, lobster conservation, and funding the Stephen King multiverse. Roads are terrible, but don't worry about that because you're going to spend half the year snowed in. The total tax burden in Maine is 10.74%. Number 3, Vermont. Your taxes go towards maple syrup prevention and ensuring every resident owns at least one flannel shirt. They're also trying to get rid of all the homeless in Burlington, which, from what I've seen, looks like an uphill battle. The total tax burden in Vermont is 11.12%. Number 2, Hawaii. There are so many other things in Hawaii that are astronomically high when it comes to cost. You'd think they'd get a break on taxes. No such luck. Taxes are remarkably high, but it's fine because the scenery is included. You get free access to beaches, waterfalls, and crushing realization that everything costs double what it should be. Yeah, it's brutal in Hawaii, and everything costs a fortune. The total tax burden in Hawaii is 11.80%. All right, before we get to number 1, if you're thinking about moving to a new state, there is a link for Home and Money in the description area below. They can get you in touch with a real estate agent anywhere in the country. All right, on to number 1. And number 1, New York. Yes, New York State is expensive when it comes to taxes. It's not just New York City. You pay thousands in taxes, but at least you get free subway delays and a front row seat to the latest rat versus pigeon fight. And that's just in New York City. When it comes to upstate, all those tax dollars go towards plowing roads during the winter. The total tax burden in New York is 12.02%. That is brutal. No wonder they're losing people so fast. All right, that's today's video. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Hope you got some information out of it. Now go out, have a great day, be nice to each other.